So imagine a country, right, rebuilding itself after decades of conflict, trying to create a more stable and prosperous future for its people. That's Somalia today.
It is.
And at the heart of this rebuilding effort is a document. Now, this might seem a little dry at first glance, but I think it's anything but.
Oh, it is absolutely not dry when you consider what's at stake here.
Right.
We're talking about the Somali Office of the Auditor General's strategic plan for 2023 to 2027.
Ambitious.
Yeah. This isn't just some bureaucratic checklist. This is their roadmap to becoming a powerful force for good governance in Somalia.
Okay, so break that down for us a little bit. The Office of the Auditor General, the OAGS, as I'm seeing it here, what exactly do they do?
So think of them as Somalia's financial watchdogs.
Okay.
Their job is to make sure that the government is using public funds responsibly and effectively. They're the ones who dig into the books, examine the spending, and hold the government accountable for every Somali shilling.
So like financial detective.
Exactly.
Making sure everything adds up.
Making sure everything adds up.
What I find so fascinating about this is that they're not just looking back and saying, like, ooh, you made these mistakes. They're trying to prevent future problems with this strategic plan.
That's exactly right. And that's where it gets really interesting, I think.
Yeah.
The OAGS is really envisioning itself as a role model organization in good governance.
Wow.
Not just within Somalia, but potentially across Africa.
Okay.
They're setting a high bar, aiming to become a beacon of transparency and accountability in a region that really desperately needs it.
So they're not just talking the talk. They're actually, like, putting in the work, trying to figure out how to walk the walk.
They are walking the walk. They're saying, look, we're not just going to audit other people. We're going to hold ourselves to those same high standards.
And this is where the strategic plan comes in.
This is where the strategic plan comes in. This document lays out precisely how they plan to do that. They're talking about everything from, boosting their capacity to conduct more sophisticated audits, especially in areas like IT, forensic accounting, to partnering with regional governments, and even engaging directly with Somali citizens.
So it's clear they have big ambitions for the future of good governance in Somalia.
Oh, yeah.
But they're facing some pretty significant challenges too, right?
They are.
I mean, let's be honest, Somalia has had its fair share of difficulties when it comes to corruption, transparency, these sorts of things.
You're not wrong. And to their credit, the OAGS is very upfront about those challenges in the strategic plan.
Okay.
They lay it all out in what they call a SWOT analysis. Strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats.
So let's dive into that SWOT analysis a little bit. What are some of the specific weaknesses they're identifying as potential roadblocks?
Well, one of the biggest ones they point to is a lack of skilled auditors.
Okay.
Especially in specialized areas like IT and forensic accounting.
Right.
Think about it, as Somalia modernizes, its government is increasingly reliant on complex IT systems.
Makes sense.
The OAGS needs people who can audit those systems.
Right.
Make sure they're secure, that data is being managed properly, all of that.
It's like trying to solve a 21st century crime with, like, 20th century tools. You need to adapt.
Right, exactly.
And what about those forensic accounting skills? Why are those so important in this context?
Well, because Somalia, it's had its struggles with corruption, right?
Yeah.
To really tackle that head on, the OAGS needs to be able to conduct really thorough forensic investigations when allegations of fraud or mismanagement surface.
Okay.
That requires a very specific and a highly technical skill set.
Yeah.
One that, frankly, they're still working to develop within their ranks.
So it sounds like capacity building, training, and equipping their staff with the right skills is a major priority for the OAGS if they're going to be successful.
Absolutely. And it's not just about technical skills.
Right.
They also talk about the need for more robust legal frameworks to support their work and better mechanisms for actually enforcing their audit recommendations.
Interesting.
Right now, they might do a fantastic audit that uncovers a major problem, but they don't necessarily have the sort of teeth to make sure something actually changes as a result.
Right. They need to be able to bark and bite, so to speak.
Exactly.
But even with more capacity, even with stronger legal backing, they're still operating in a challenging environment.
Yeah.
What are some of those external threats that they're up against?
Political interference is a big one.
Right.
For the OAGS to be truly effective, it needs to be completely independent.
Okay.
Free from any undue influence. But in a country like Somalia, which is still rebuilding its democratic institutions,
Of course.
maintaining that independence, it can be a constant battle.
Yeah, it takes a lot of courage to stand up and hold powerful people accountable, especially when the lines between politics and governance can be a bit blurry.
Mm-hmm.
So how do they plan to navigate all of these challenges? How are they actually going to achieve their goals?
Yeah.
This is where the rubber meets the road, right?
This is it, yeah.
What's the actual plan of action?
So their strategic plan outlines some very specific outputs they're aiming to deliver.
Yeah.
For example, they want to ensure timely, high-quality financial audits of the federal government.
Okay.
And they're not talking about delivering those audits years down the line.
Right.
They're aiming to present those audits to Parliament within 3 months of receiving the financial statements.
That's ambitious.
Very ambitious.
Wow. So we're talking about holding the government accountable for every shilling spent
Yeah.
and doing it quickly enough that the information is still relevant.
Exactly.
It's actionable, no more dusty reports sitting on shelves gathering dust.
No more dusty reports. And it's not just about speed, it's about quality, too.
Right.
They're working to build a team of specialized financial auditors, implementing rigorous quality control measures, aligning their practices with international standards.
Really upping their game.
They're upping their game when it comes to those traditional financial audits.
Yeah. But we talked earlier about their desire to expand into other types of audits.
Right.
Like those compliance and forensic investigations you mentioned.
Exactly.
So what are their goals in those areas?
So for compliance audits, they're aiming to cover a wider range of issues across different government ministries and agencies. We're talking about making sure things like procurement processes, human resource management, even adherence to environmental regulations are all up to par.
Okay.
They want to ensure that the government is operating efficiently and effectively at every level.
So they're casting a wider net. They're making sure that all aspects of governance are being held to a high standard.
Exactly.
And what about those forensic audits? Sounds like they're really trying to crack down on any misuse of public funds.
They are. Their goal is to complete 100% of planned forensic audits each year,
Wow, that's
digging deep into any allegation of fraud, waste, or abuse of public resources.
they're not messing around.
No. To achieve this, they're building a dedicated team of forensic audit specialists, creating their own forensic audit manual, and even establishing a digital forensic lab.
Oh, wow. A digital forensic lab. That sounds intense.
It's pretty cool, equipped with all the latest technology.
It really shows that they're serious about bringing Somalia's auditing practices into the 21st century.
Absolutely. It's a clear signal that they're committed to tackling fraud and corruption head on.
Yeah.
And they're not just focusing on the what of government spending, they're also starting to look at the why.
Okay.
They're starting to venture into performance audits, which are all about evaluating the effectiveness of government programs.
Right, because it's one thing to make sure that money isn't being stolen or misused.
Right.
It's another to ensure that it's actually being used to deliver real results for the Somali people.
Exactly.
So what are their objectives when it comes to these performance audits?
Well, they're starting small, but they are aiming big. Their goal is to submit at least one performance audit report to Parliament each year during the strategic plan period,
Okay.
which is smart because performance audits, they require a different skill set, a more analytical approach than traditional financial audits.
Right.
They're still building that capacity, finding those specialized auditors, developing their methodologies. They're learning as they go.
It's a journey.
It is a journey.
And speaking of journeys, they're also specifically looking at donor-funded projects.
Yes.
Why is that such a big focus for them?
Well, it's crucial because those projects often come with their own sets of rules and regulations, right?
Right.
And the OEGS wants to ensure that those projects are implemented transparently and effectively.
Makes sense.
They aim to increase the number of donor-funded project audit reports they complete each year.
Okay.
It's about building trust, not just within Somalia, but with the international community as well.
It's a win-win.
It's a win-win.
It's like they're saying to international donors, we're serious about making sure your investments are being used responsibly.
Exactly.
And that kind of transparency can go a long way in building confidence and attracting more support in the future.
Absolutely.
But it's not enough to just do all these audits, right?
No.
They also need to communicate their findings effectively.
Right.
So what's their strategy for getting the word out?
Well, that's where their communication strategy comes in.
Okay.
They're committed to making all of their audit reports publicly available online, sharing them on social media, and creating these citizen-friendly
I
summaries
was going to say.
that break down complex findings into digestible language.
Love that.
Right.
Yeah.
Because,
No more jargon.
it's one thing to have the report, but then if nobody can understand it, what good does it do, right?
Exactly.
So they're really making an effort to make sure their work is accessible to the average person in Somalia.
They are. It's about empowering citizens with the information they need to hold their government accountable.
That's the goal.
And it's not just about one-way communication either.
No.
They also plan to create mechanisms for citizens to directly provide tips on potential audit topics, offer feedback on audit reports.
Exactly.
It's a refreshing approach, and it really highlights their commitment to transparency and accountability. But it's not just about engaging with the public, is it? They're also focused on building strong relationships with other key players.
They are.
So tell me a little bit about that.
So they emphasize regular engagement with both the executive branch and the parliament.
Okay.
They hold these regular forums with different government ministries and agencies to discuss audit findings, recommendations, emerging issues, all of that. They're not just pointing fingers, they're working to find solutions collaboratively.
It's like they're not just coming in and saying, this is what you're doing wrong.
Right.
It's more like, here's what we found. How can we work together to make things better for everybody?
Exactly. It's a much more collaborative approach.
Yeah. And you know what else I find really interesting? They're not afraid to have their own work scrutinized either.
That's true.
They're actively seeking external quality reviews from organizations like AfroZe.
Yeah, the African Organization of English-Speaking Supreme Audit Institutions.
Right. So they're saying, hey, come in, take a look at what we're doing. Tell us how we can improve.
Exactly. It's all about continuous improvement. And this collaborative spirit, it really shines through in their work with Somalia's federal member states, the FMS.
Right, because we have to remember, Somalia has a federal system of government.
It does.
So there are these regional governments, each with their own audit offices, working in tandem with the federal government.
Right, it adds a whole other layer of complexity.
So how does the OAGS's work at that federal level actually trickle down to impact those regional offices?
Well, they recognize that they can't build a more accountable Somalia on their own. They need a strong network of audit offices that are all operating effectively at every level of government.
Okay.
That's why they've really prioritized capacity building for those FMS audit offices.
It's like that old saying, a chain is only as strong as its weakest link.
Exactly. So they're sharing best practices, providing training, offering guidance to help those regional offices really step up their game.
Level the playing field.
Exactly. They're even facilitating these exchange visits between auditors from different regions,
Oh, interesting.
creating these opportunities for them to learn from each other's experiences and build relationships.
Oh, I love that.
It's fantastic, right? Fostering a culture of collaboration and shared learning across the entire country.
So it's not just about auditing numbers.
No.
It's about auditing systems. It's about building capacity and nurturing this culture of accountability that really extends from the federal level all the way down to those local communities.
It's a long-term investment in Somalia's future.
It is. And that, I think, is what makes this strategic plan so much more than just a dry technical document.
I agree.
It's really a vision for a better Somalia. It's a recognition that lasting change requires more than just words on paper. It requires that sustained commitment to good governance, to transparency, to collaboration at all levels of society.
It really does.
And that commitment, it shines through on every page of this plan.
It does.
It's ambitious, it's comprehensive, and it really does fill me with a lot of hope for the future. But as we've discussed, the road ahead is not without its challenges.
It's not. I mean, Somalia has a complex history, right?
Yeah.
And these deeply ingrained systems, they can be very difficult to change.
They can. So it really does beg the question, can the OAGS, with this commitment to good governance, with this very ambitious roadmap for the future, can it truly be a driving force for lasting change in Somalia?
That is the million-dollar question, isn't it? And it's one that we'll continue to follow closely here at the Deep Dive because ultimately a more transparent and accountable Somalia, that benefits everyone.
It does. It's a journey worth watching, and we encourage all of you to follow along with us.